Let us paint a portrait of the modern ideal, the person our culture tells us we should aspire to be. Their life is a masterpiece of frictionless living. Their mornings begin not with a jarring alarm, but with a gentle, simulated sunrise. Their food, perfectly calibrated for their nutritional needs, is delivered to their door with a few silent taps on a glowing screen. Their work, often remote, is in a safe and respectable field, one that promises a comfortable work-life balance and minimizes the risk of catastrophic failure. Their entertainment is an endless, personalized stream, curated by an algorithm that knows their desires better than they do, ensuring they are never faced with a moment of challenging or uncomfortable boredom. Their social life is a carefully managed portfolio of low-stakes digital interactions, providing a constant, pleasant hum of connection without the messy, demanding, and often painful work of real-world intimacy. Even their opinions and moral stances are conveniently downloaded from their chosen ideological tribe, providing a sense of certainty and righteousness without the agonizing labor of independent thought. This person is not unhappy. On the contrary, they are deeply, placidly content. They have successfully eliminated the great frictions that have defined human existence for millennia: the struggle for survival, the burden of effort, the terror of the unknown. They have achieved the dream that has been sold to us for generations. They have engineered a life of maximum comfort and minimal pain. In a world filled with chaos, uncertainty, and suffering, who would not want this? This vision is not just an idle fantasy. It is the logical endpoint of our entire technological and social project. We have used our collective genius not to launch ourselves toward dangerous new stars, but to build a comfortable, well-lit, and perfectly climate-controlled room from which to watch the universe go by. The desire for safety, for security, for a life without struggle, is a deeply human one. And by all popular metrics, we have come closer than ever to achieving it. We have, it seems, finally solved the problem of life. But over a century ago, a philosopher with a famously penetrating and unforgiving gaze looked into the future and saw this comfortable plateau not as humanity's greatest achievement, but as its most terrifying tombstone. In his strange and prophetic book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche described the coming of a creature who would one day inherit the earth. This creature was not a monster in the traditional sense. He was not violent or evil. He was pleasant. He was healthy. He was, by all accounts, perfectly content. And he was the very embodiment of the modern ideal we have just described. Nietzsche gave this being a name, der letzte Mensch, the last man. Nietzsche's prophecy was not a celebration, but a warning of existential horror. He feared a future where humanity, in its relentless pursuit of comfort and the elimination of all pain, would trade its soul for a life of trivial, risk-free contentment. The last man is the final, exhausted stage of a humanity that has lost its will to strive, to overcome, to create, to risk itself for the sake of a higher goal. He is the man who no longer gives birth to a dancing star, but is content to simply sit and watch the stars on a screen. And with a chilling accuracy that echoes through our algorithmically optimized lives, Nietzsche put these words into the mouth of this final, blinking creature. "We have invented happiness," say the last men, and they blink. To truly grasp the horror of Nietzsche's prophecy, we must understand the crisis to which the last man is a solution. Nietzsche's entire philosophy is built upon his most famous and terrifying declaration, "God is dead." By this, he did not mean that a literal deity had perished. He meant that the entire system of religious and metaphysical beliefs that had given meaning, purpose, and a moral foundation to Western civilization for 2,000 years had crumbled. The great anchor had been lifted, and humanity was now adrift in a cold, meaningless, and infinite cosmos. Without God, without the promise of heaven or the threat of hell, the fundamental questions returned with a vengeance. Why are we here? How should we live? What is the point of it all? This crisis, this death of God, created a vacuum. And into this vacuum, Nietzsche saw two possible futures for humanity, two paths that would determine our ultimate destiny. He laid out these two paths in his great prophetic work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. In the book, the prophet Zarathustra descends from his mountain solitude to teach humanity how to live in this new godless world. The first path he offers is the path of ascent, the path of the Übermensch, or the Overman. The Overman is the goal that humanity must set for itself. He is the being who can look into the abyss of a meaningless universe and, instead of despairing, laughs. He does not seek meaning from an external source. He creates it. He is a master of his own passions, a commander of his own will, and a creator of his own values. The Overman embraces suffering, struggle, and chaos as the necessary soil from which all greatness grows. He says a triumphant and joyous yes to the totality of life, in all its terrible beauty. The Overman is Nietzsche's dangerous and difficult hope for what we could become. But Zarathustra knows that this path is not for everyone. He knows that the freedom of a godless world is a terrifying burden, and so he presents humanity with the alternative, the other possible future. This is the path of dissent, the path of the last man. The last man is what humanity will become if it shies away from the difficult task of creating new values. Faced with the terror of a meaningless existence, the last man's solution is not to overcome, but to shrink. His goal is to eliminate every peak and every valley of the human experience, to create a flat, safe, and perfectly pleasant plateau. He seeks not greatness, but comfort. He seeks not adventure, but security. He seeks not a passionate life, but a long one. The last man has no great ambitions and no great sorrows. He avoids anyone or anything that is different or difficult. In his world, everyone is the same, and everyone is content in their sameness. Zarathustra describes this creature with a mixture of pity and contempt. The earth has become small, he says, and on it hops the last man, who makes everything small. The last man still works, but only as a form of mild entertainment, being careful that it is never too harrowing. For his other pleasures, Zarathustra says, he has his little poison for the daytime and his little poison for the night. The small, regular doses of sedation, be it mindless work or mindless entertainment, that keep any profound feelings of despair or ambition at bay. The last man looks back on the great struggles of history, the ages of faith, passion, and art, and sees them as a form of madness. Formerly all the world was mad, say the most refined, and they blink. But here is the most chilling part of Nietzsche's prophecy. When Zarathustra describes this pathetic, comfortable creature to the people in the marketplace, he does so hoping to disgust them, to shock them into choosing the difficult path of the Overman. But the crowd has the opposite reaction. They do not recoil in horror. They cheer. They shout, "Give us this last man, O Zarathustra. Make us into these last men. You can have the Overman for yourself." And in that moment, Nietzsche reveals his deepest fear, that when given the choice, humanity will not choose the dangerous path to greatness. It will choose the easy, comfortable, and soul-crushing path to a trivial happiness. It is easy to hear Nietzsche's description of the last man and to see him everywhere out in the world. We see him in the vapid spectacle of our celebrity culture, in the shallow conformity of our social media feeds, in the relentless marketing of comfort and convenience that defines our age. It is easy to point the finger and to feel a sense of intellectual superiority, to think that we are somehow immune to this spiritual plague. But the most difficult and honest task is to turn the gaze inward. The first time I truly understood Nietzsche's prophecy, my dominant feeling was not one of academic fascination. It was a cold, sickening wave of self-recognition. I am not speaking to you now from some high philosophical mountain, judging the herd below. I am confessing to you a battle that rages within my own soul every single day. The last man is not them. The last man is me. He is with me in the quiet moments of decision that define a life. He is there in the evening, after a long day when I have a choice. On my nightstand sits a difficult classic work of philosophy, a book that promises a challenging and rewarding struggle. And next to it sits my phone, a glowing portal to a world of effortless, algorithmically curated entertainment. The book requires effort, focus, and the willingness to be confused. The phone promises a guaranteed, immediate, and easy dopamine reward. The last man is the voice in my head that whispers with a perfectly reasonable tone, "You're tired. You've had a long day. You deserve a break. The book will be there tomorrow. Just relax. Just watch. Just scroll." And with a quiet, almost imperceptible sense of defeat, my hand reaches for the phone. He is there in my relationships. An opportunity arises for a deep, honest, and potentially difficult conversation with someone I care about. A conversation that could lead to a stronger and more authentic connection. But the last man whispers of the risks, the awkwardness, the potential for conflict, the emotional effort required. And so I send a shallow, non-committal text message instead, a small dose of digital poison that preserves a fragile peace at the cost of genuine intimacy. He is there in my creative life, standing as a gatekeeper before the terrifying emptiness of the blank page. The difficult, soul-wrenching work of creation promises struggle, self-doubt, and the high probability of failure. The social media feed, by contrast, promises instant distraction, the pleasant hum of other people's thoughts, the comfortable feeling of being a spectator rather than a player, and all too often, the last man wins. And what is the feeling in the aftermath of these small victories of comfort? It is not the feeling of genuine rest or satisfaction. It is a uniquely modern form of self-contempt. It is the dull ache of knowing, deep down, that you have betrayed a stronger, better version of yourself. It is the hollow feeling that settles in after you have spent 3 hours passively consuming the curated lives of others instead of actively living your own. It is the bitter taste of knowing that you have traded your one, precious and finite reserve of attention for a fleeting and utterly forgettable comfort. This feeling is the proof of Nietzsche's diagnosis. The happiness, invented by the last man, is a cheap and fraudulent substitute for the deep, difficult joy that can only be found on the other side of a meaningful struggle. The most terrifying realization of all is that the last man is not an external enemy. He is the entropy of the human spirit. He is the gravitational pull toward the path of least resistance. He is the sweet, seductive voice of our own exhaustion, our own fear, and our own desire for a life without pain. The struggle against him is not a war that can be won once and for all. It is a daily, quiet, and often lonely rebellion against the most reasonable and comfortable parts of our own nature. To recognize the last man within us is the first and most painful step. But to remain in that state of self-contempt is to allow him to win. The diagnosis of a disease is not the same as the cure. If the last man represents the slow, comfortable entropy of the human spirit, then our only hope is to become an active and conscious force of rebellion against the most seductive parts of our own nature. Nietzsche did not leave us in this wasteland of mediocrity without a map. He provided a compass, a direction for the difficult upward path. It is the path of the Overman. This is not a destination to be reached, but a star to navigate by. It is a series of practices designed to reawaken the sleeping will and to wage a quiet, daily war against the tyranny of comfort. The first and most powerful practice is the embrace of amor fati, the love of your fate. The last man's entire existence is a project of risk management. His primary goal is the elimination of pain, discomfort, and struggle. Amor fati is the direct and total antidote to this worldview. It is the practice of not just tolerating your hardships, but loving them. It is the radical affirmation of your life, not in spite of its suffering, but because of it. Nietzsche believed that all greatness, all strength, all wisdom is forged in the fires of adversity. Therefore, to wish for a life without struggle is to wish for a life without greatness. The practical application of this is a fundamental shift in mindset. When you are faced with a setback, a failure, or a moment of profound pain, the last man's voice within you will cry out, "Why me? How can I make this feeling go away?" The practice of amor fati is to meet that moment with a different, stronger voice that says, "Yes, this too is my life. This obstacle is not a bug. It is a feature. This pain is the necessary resistance that will make my spirit stronger. It is a declaration of ownership over your entire destiny. The second path is to become a creator of your own values. The last man is a conformist at his very core. His morality, his opinions, and his sense of purpose are all downloaded from the herd, because this is the safest and easiest way to live. To walk the path of the Overman, you must undertake the difficult and lonely work of becoming a philosophical lawgiver to yourself. This begins with a radical act of questioning. You must place the values you have passively absorbed on trial. Is the pursuit of comfort truly your highest good? Is the avoidance of pain more important than the pursuit of your own truth? Is the approval of the herd more valuable than your own integrity? This work requires a commitment to solitude, to deep reading, and to honest, uncomfortable self-reflection. It requires disconnecting from the constant, deafening noise of the digital crowd and asking yourself in the quiet, what do I, in the depths of my own being, truly deem to be noble, to be beautiful, and to be worth suffering for? To create your own table of values is the ultimate act of rebellion against the second-hand morality of the last man. Finally, we must bring this grand philosophy down to the small, mundane choices of our daily lives. This is the third path. In all things, choose the harder path. The war against the last man is won or lost in the small moments. It is won in the evening, when you choose the difficult book over the easy stream. It is won in your relationships, when you choose the honest, awkward conversation over the comfortable, evasive text message. It is won in your creative life, when you choose the terrifying emptiness of the blank page over the effortless stimulation of the infinite scroll. Each of these small decisions is like casting a vote. Every time you choose the path of least resistance, you cast a vote for the last man within you. Every time you choose the path of disciplined, meaningful effort, you cast a vote for the Overman. A great life is not the result of a single heroic decision. It is the slow, patient accumulation of thousands of these small, courageous acts of rebellion against your own deepest desire for comfort and ease. We began this journey with a portrait of a strange, blinking creature, a being perfectly optimized for a life of comfort and ease. We have walked through the landscape of Nietzsche's thought and held that portrait up against the mirror of our own lives and our own culture. We must now be honest enough to admit the conclusion. The hard truth is that Nietzsche's prophecy has been largely fulfilled. We are living in the age of the last man. His values, the veneration of comfort, the obsession with safety, the elimination of all risk, and the pursuit of a trivial, painless happiness have become the dominant values of our civilization. We are, in so many ways, the people who have invented happiness and blink, content in our well-lit, climate-controlled caves. It would be easy to end here, in a state of cynical despair, to simply accept that the battle is lost. But to do so would be to fundamentally misunderstand Nietzsche's ultimate purpose. His prophecy was not a final, fatalistic verdict on the human race. It was a warning. And the purpose of a warning is not to declare what will be, but to show us the terrible future we must actively fight to avoid. The very fact that you can recognize the last man in our society, and more painfully within yourself, is the ultimate proof that you are not yet entirely him. The part of you that feels that quiet self-contempt after a day of passive consumption, the part that yearns for a difficult but meaningful struggle, the part that is stirred by these dangerous ideas, that is the seed of the Overman within you. The recognition of your own potential for smallness is the necessary first step on the path to greatness. The battle between the last man and the Overman is not a grand, historical event. It is a quiet war fought within each of us every single day, in every small choice. It is the choice between the easy path and the harder path, between the comfortable lie and the difficult truth, between the person you are and the person you could become. If you are ready to choose the difficult path of self-overcoming, I invite